evaluating trigonometric functions, y is equal to f of x. It is finding the value of y at a given value of x. So the way you evaluate functions in general mathematics is also true in evaluating trigonometric functions, because we are dealing with functions. So let us have this example. Given x is equal to 0, pi over 2, negative pi over 3, and pi, and these are radian measures. Okay, we are going to evaluate or finding the value of y in terms of x. So the given is y is equal to x cosine x. We first try by using 0 as the value of x. So we are changing x here into 0. Okay, so 0 times cosine 0 is automatically 0. So that is the value of y when x is 0. So the value of x when that is pi over 2 with the same given y is equal to x cosine x. So we are going to change or substitute x into pi over 2. So we have pi over 2 times cosine pi over 2. And cosine pi over 2 is also the same with cosine 90 degrees. And cosine 90 degrees is actually equal to 0. Okay, so 0 times pi over 2 is 0. So that is the value of y. So when x is equal to negative pi over 3 here, then change x into negative pi over 3. So we have times cosine negative pi over 3. Cosine negative pi over 3 is also equal to cosine negative 60 degrees. Okay, so that is in degree form. So y is equal to negative pi over 6, because negative pi over or cosine negative pi over 3 is equal to 1/2. Okay, so y will now give us a product of negative pi over 6. So when x is equal to pi here, then with the same given, we change or let x be equal to pi. So we have pi times cosine pi, and cosine pi is equal to negative 1. So negative 1 times pi is negative pi. So we have the second example, y is equal to negative sine x minus cosecant x. When x is equal to 0, so we substitute x into 0. So we have negative sine 0 minus cosecant 0. Remember that negative sine 0 is also the same with negative sine. This is also the same with negative sine 0 degree. Okay, so we have sine 0 is 0. So negative 0, but there's no negative 0, that is automatically 0. Okay, minus 1 over 0. Remember that cosecant function is the reciprocal of sine function, and that is automatically 1 over sine 0. But sine 0 is 0, so we have 1 over 0, and that is undefined. Okay, so the reason why we have an undefined value is this: cosecant 0 is undefined, therefore the entire operation will now be undefined, and that is true at x that is equal to 0. So what about if we have x that is equal to pi over 2? So change x into pi over 2. So we have negative sine pi over 2 minus cosecant pi over 2. And remember again that pi over 2 is equal to 90 degrees. Okay, so we have negative 1, because sine 90 degrees is 1. So we have negative of 1 minus 1 over 1. And again, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So itong 1 na to will come here, reciprocal. Okay, so negative 1 minus 1 is equal to negative 2. So what about if we have x that is negative pi over 3? So substituting x here into negative pi over 3 will now give us y that is equal to negative sine negative pi over 3 minus cosecant of negative pi over 3. Okay, that is in radian. And the negative pi over 3 is equal to negative 60 degrees. Okay, this is also negative 60 degrees. Now, using your calculator, if you want to use the radian, then the calculator must be in radian. Or if you want degrees, then calculator must be in degrees. Okay, so we have y is equal to negative square root of 3 over 2 minus, okay, reciprocal identity kasi ng cosecant ang sign, kaya napunta ito sa denominator here. Okay, that is 1 over negative square root of 3 over 2. Negative times negative is positive. That is why here positive. And negative will give us positive. Okay, now square root of 3 over 2 plus 2 square root of 3 over 3 can still be combined following this. We would like to have the same fractions, meaning 2 times 3 will give us 6, and that is what we call LCD. So we can multiply 3 over 3, anyway this is just 1, and 2 over 2, anyway that is just also 1, so there is no effect. Square root of 3 times 3, okay, will give us 3 square root of 3, and 2 times 3 will give us 6. The other 2 times 2 is 4, so 4 square root of 3, 3 times 2 is 6. So 3 square root of 3 over 6 plus 4 square root of 3 over 6. 3 plus 4 is 7. Then just copy square root of 3. So we have 7 square root of 3 over 6. You will not cancel out, no? Or get the lowest term of 3 of 6 because you're going back to what we originally have. So we want to have a single number, that's why we did this, the entire operation here. The final answer is 7 square root of 3 over 6. However, if we have x that is pi, so y is equal to negative sine pi minus cosecant pi will give us, well, this is already 0 minus 1 over 0 form, which should not happen. Remember that pi is 180 degrees, okay? And this will cause undefined value. Therefore, y that is equal to negative sine x minus cosecant x is undefined at x that is equal to pi. So here, y that is equal to 2 cotangent x, when x is equal to 0, so we can automatically have cotangent 0 here. And cotangent function is the reciprocal of tangent function. So cotangent 0 is equal to 1 over tangent 0. But tangent 0 by the rule of ratio identity is also equal to sine 0 over cosine 0. And because sine 0 is 0 and cosine 0 is 1, therefore tangent 0 is 0. And 1 over 0 is not a proper indication that the value is known or defined. Okay, so y equals 2 cotangent x is undefined at x that is equal to 0. So what about if we will use pi over 2? So we have 2 cotangent x, substituting cotangent pi over 2. Cotangent pi over 2 is also equal to 1 over tangent pi over 2. Okay, and for tangent pi over 2, tangent pi over 2 is equal to sine pi over 2 over cosine pi over 2. And when we talk about pi over 2, that is actually 90 degrees. Okay, so sine 90 degrees is 1, cosine pi over 2 is 0. Tangent pi over 2 is actually undefined. However, in the rule of cotangent, you need to get the reciprocal of 1 over 0. The reciprocal of 1 over 0 is actually 0. So here, babaliktarin natin 1 over 0, denominator mapupunta sa numerator, and the numerator mapupunta sa denominator. So 0 divided by 1 is 0. So it means to say, when tangent is undefined, cotangent is 0. And when cotangent is undefined, tangent is 0. So that is the relationship of these two. So if we have negative pi over 3, substituting negative pi over 3, so we have cotangent negative pi over 3. Negative pi over 3 is equal to negative 60 degrees. Okay? So reciprocal identity of cotangent is tangent, so that is also equal to 1 over tangent negative pi over 3. And tangent negative pi over 3 is equal to negative square root of 3. Okay, that negative 60 degrees is found. Remember the negative sign, that is a clockwise rotation, and that is found on quadrant 4. Okay, that makes it negative because the signs of x in quadrant 4 is positive, y is negative. So we have negative tangent. And that is equal to negative square root of 3 over 3 by rationalizing it. Okay, so we have 1 over square root of 3. Multiply that to square root of 3. Square root of 3. Okay, square root of 3 times 1 is square root of 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So square root of 9, 3. There's negative sign here, so we have negative square root of 3 over 3. Okay? So 2 times 1 over negative square root of 3. Again, because 1 over negative square root of 3 is already negative square root of 3 over 3. So multiply that to 2 will give you negative 2 square root of 3 over 3. So that is the final answer. So when x is equal to pi, we substitute pi. So we have 2 cotangent pi. And cotangent pi is equal to 1 over tangent pi. And tangent pi is the ratio of sine pi over cosine pi. Sine pi is 0 and cosine pi is negative 1. So babaliktarin natin ang 0 over negative 1. Magiging undefined siya. Okay? Getting the reciprocal of 0 over negative 1 will give us negative 1 over 0, which should not be, making it undefined, okay, at x that is equal to pi. So we have the fourth, y is equal to tangent x minus secant x. We start by using 0 as x, substituting tangent. So we have tangent 0 minus secant 0. Tangent 0 is 0 because of the relationship sine 0 is 0 and cosine 1, cosine 0 is 1. So that is for tangent. Okay, so 0 minus 1 over cosine 0. Recall that the reciprocal of secant is cosine. Okay, so we have 1 over cosine 0. Cosine 0 is 1. So you can just replace it here. Negative 1 over 1 is negative 1. So that is the value when x is equal to 0. But when x is equal to pi over 2, you notice that tangent pi over 2 will give you undefined. What is the reason? Tangent pi over 2 is also equal to sine pi over 2 over cosine pi over 2. And because sine pi over 2 is 1, cosine pi over 2 is 0, undefined. Tangent pi over 2 is undefined. And because of that, the entire operation will now be undefined at x that is equal to pi over 2. When 1 is undefined and added to defined values, the resulting answer is undefined. So what about if we have x that is equal to negative pi over 3? Okay, so substituting that value will give you tangent negative pi over 3, and that is equal to negative square root of 3. Okay, so minus secant negative pi over 3, and secant negative pi over 3 is the reciprocal of 1 over cosine negative pi over 3. And that is equal to negative square root of 3 minus 1 over 1/2. Because cosine, remember that cosine negative pi over 3 is also equal to cosine negative 60 degrees, and that is equal to 1/2. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. So because of negative sign here, it will become negative 2, carrying the sign negative square root of 3. So the final answer is negative 2 minus square root of 3. So what about if you're going to use x that is equal to pi, tangent pi minus secant pi, using again the reciprocal identity, tangent pi is 0, okay? Because of the rule, sine pi is 0 and cosine pi is negative 1, so tangent pi is 0. Cosine pi is negative 1. So negative, negative is positive. The answer is 1. So we have the fifth. Y that is equal to 1/3 sine x. When x is 0, sine 0 is 0. So 0 times 1/3 is 0. So what about when x is pi over 2? Substitute. So we have 1/3 sine pi over 2. And sine pi over 2 is also equal to sine 90 degrees. And that is 1. 1/3 times 1 is 1/3. When x is negative pi over 3, so we have 1/3 sine of negative pi over 3. And that will give us 1/3 times negative square root of 3 over 2. Remember that negative pi over 3 is equal to negative 60 degrees. And when you plot that or graph that, you can see it at quadrant 4. And the value of y there, or the sign of y here at quadrant 4, is negative. That is the reason we have negative square root of 3 over 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And 1 times negative square root of 3 is negative square root of 3. Okay? You cannot get, or again, this is a mortal sin. You cannot do this. Never do this. The 3 and 6 will be 1 over 2. That should not happen. Okay? So be very careful that the final answer is negative square root of 3 over 6. So when x is pi, so we have 1/3 sine pi, and sine pi is 0, then y is 0.